Hello, my name is Marvin Heemeyer, and this tape is about my life. I want to say that I believe that I am an American patriot. I believe in the free enterprise system. I believe in a level playing field of competition. If you want to change that level playing field of competition to your advantage, basically you give me license to do that also when my opportunity comes around, because you're the leaders of the community, and you set the example, and you do the teaching, and you by through example, through your actions, you show the community how things are supposed to be done. Well, God blessed me for the task that I am about to undertake. It has to be done, and the world will write stories about how wrong I am and everything. And without a doubt, I wished it could be done a different way. But there is no way to make this right.
After losing a decade-long legal battle to a powerful family who took his land and shop, Air Force veteran Marvin Heemeyer from South Dakota went on an 18-month-long secret revenge lone wolf operation upon Granby, Colorado, targeting everyone whom he believed to have wronged him and anyone who sided against him in his past disputes. Marvin proceeded with this operation on June 4th, 2004 by going on a rampage, demolishing targeted buildings like the bank, a newspaper office, the house of a former mayor, and many more. 13 buildings were reportedly heavily destroyed, but what did Marvin use to cause such massive destruction? Well, it was thanks to his Komatsu bulldozer, which he took those 18 months on applying armor plating upgrades to the vehicle to pretty much function like an armored tank, covering the engine and the cockpit. He even added gun ports fitted for his assault rifles and installed cameras linked to monitors inside the cabin, so he was able to have a 360 view of his surroundings. This armored bulldozer was known as the Killdozer.
Getting ready to go across the bridge. Need units to proceed eastbound across the bridge. Set up again at Mount Hollywood.
C4 grenades and roughly 200 bullets had little to no effect on the Killdozer during the rampage as the police desperately tried to stop Marvin from endangering lives. It seemed that nothing could stop the Killdozer, but this rampage ended after 2 hours as Marvin became trapped inside a hardware store he wanted to destroy, finally immobilizing the armored bulldozer as it collapsed down to the store's basement. With no way out, Marvin took his own life, marking the end of what is known as the Killdozer Rampage. Fortunately, no one else was injured or killed, but there were a few close calls as 11 out of the 13 buildings Marvin targeted were occupied. Luckily, everyone escaped with their lives mere seconds before destruction. The Killdozer Rampage gained national attention that day, and while most saw Marvin as a terrorist, there are others who see him as a patriotic American, standing up for his land and business against the government. Whatever your thoughts on Marvin, this story will never be forgotten. But what is mostly forgotten is that roughly a decade prior to the Killdozer Rampage, a similar yet lesser known story occurred on May 17th, 1995. This time, instead of a bulldozer pretending to be an armored tank, this was an actual armored tank. And even worse, instead of a small town, this happened inside a highly populated city. This was the 1995 San Diego Tank Rampage. So, how did this happen, and who was this maniac? Well, we gotta take a look at the rise and fall of Sean Timothy Nelson, the man behind the destruction of San Diego. Born on August 21st of 1959 at Birdseye, Utah, where his family later moved to San Diego, California. Growing up in Claremont neighborhood, not much is known of Sean's earliest years, but a childhood friend of his described Sean as a smart and funny guy. Everybody liked him. So fair to say that Sean's early life was seemingly normal and stable, But that doesn't seem to be the case when in 1978, he enlisted in the United States Army's Armor Branch and was stationed at West Germany, serving in a tank battalion as the driver of a M60 tank. During that time, the Cold War continues on, and the US stationed troops in Western Europe for the purpose of deterring the Soviet Union. The majority were placed in West Germany, where Sean was stationed at for 2 years. It was there when Sean was always seen to be in trouble with his commanding officers, and by 1980, he was separated due to multifaceted disciplinary problems, and was given an honorable discharge. By 1984, Sean married Susie Hellman, who was a legal secretary. We owned a home. He was a successful plumber, and I was a legal secretary. We had a maid. We had a pretty good life for 6 years. It all seemed to be pretty good for Sean from early to mid 80s, but it was like that until the later years that things began to trample down. In 1988, Sean's mother, Betty Nelson, died from cancer. This devastated Sean as he was reportedly very close to his mother and his father, as in 1992, his father also passed away due to cancer. The deaths of both of his parents has shattered Sean and may possibly be the reason Sean, unfortunately, resorted to alcohol and drugs to cope with his losses. Susie filed for a divorce in 1990, possibly due to Sean's substance abuse, which affected Sean's behavior. That very same year, Sean suffered neck and back injuries from a motorcycle accident, which would made it difficult for him to run his business and was treated at the Sharp Memorial Hospital. It was there when Sean decided to just walk out of there, but was stopped by staff and security and was eventually discharged later. Already, Sean's life was crumbling apart and the substance abuse carried on, which may be the reason why after he was out of the hospital, he filed a lawsuit against the hospital for $1.6 million for malpractice during his time and even blamed them for the death of his mother. When a Superior Court judge reviewed and dismissed the case in 1993, the judge allowed the hospital to countersue Sean for $6,000 for legal costs and medical expenses. In that year, Sean's life was at rock bottom, and the consumption of alcohol and very heavy drugs like meth was dramatically increased, just to ease the physical pain from his accident and emotional pain from his divorce, losing both parents, and now having to pay thousands of dollars, which he did not have as his business was struggling. This was all clearly impacted Sean's well-being, which pushed him into darkness as friends and neighbors noticed his alarming behavior. By the next year, things were really bad for Sean as his failing plumbing business had come to a screeching halt when his equipment inside his famous van with the license plates "Can't Fix" was stolen. Without his tools, he could not do a thing for business. And as business stopped, so did utilities inside his home. His home was also about to be foreclosed, and by now any roommates he had left, and so did his current girlfriend at the time. He now had no one but himself, and his alarming behavior and mindset, as remaining friends and brothers recalled that around the time he was suicidal and may have been pessimistic. But the biggest red flag was when one day a neighbor of Sean visited and met up with him at his backyard. It was there when Sean allegedly said Oklahoma was good stuff.
I'm Tammy Payne in the TV9 newsroom. If you are anywhere downtown, you probably heard it and felt it. An explosion of some kind downtown Oklahoma City. Take a look at this picture. This is our tower cam shot. A plume of smoke rising in the air.
Debris has completely covered the street. It's blown from downtown north across the street. And it's just totally devastating. It's 1/3 of the building.
On April 19th, 1995, 168 lives were lost and hundreds more were injured for what remains the deadliest domestic terrorist attack in recent US history, the Oklahoma City bombing, perpetrated by two anti-government terrorists, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, who parked a Ryder truck next to his target to blow up. The Alfred P. Morrall Federal Building, a government complex where many employees were part of law enforcement agencies like the ATF, FBI, and the DEA, had worked at. Not only that, but a house and daycare center. Of those 168, 19 of them were children. This attack was a retaliation for the agency's involvement with the Ruby Ridge and Waco sieges that happened in the early 90s. So going back to Sean's statement on the news of the bombing, saying that it was good stuff. This was alarming and offensive, but it wasn't long until Sean himself will make it into the news a month after the bombing. May 17th, 6:30 p.m. It was another ordinary Wednesday evening for the California National Guard Armory. Only difference was that personnel were working late, and that meant that the gates of the armory were left unsecured, which was their biggest mistake. A familiar work van arrived at the gates, driven by a shirtless and highly intoxicated Sean. He got off his van and began wandering around the area looking for a tank to steal. Surprisingly, no one saw Sean when he was browsing. Sean managed to get on a tank and broke the padlock and was ready to bust out of there. What's insane is that all it takes for a tank at the time was a simple push of a button and not some sort of key or code to gain access. Fortunately, the tank he chose did not start, and so he hopped off and repeated onto another tank. Still, no one spotted Sean as he tried to start up 2 other tanks. At around 6:45, he got on one final tank and tried to start up. This time, the tank did. As he started up the tank, guards finally noticed and spotted Sean as he was on the tank, but it was already too late. Starting from the California National Guard Armory and into the streets, Sean went on and plowed down parked cars, street lights, stop signs, anything he came across. It would flatten. Law enforcement were notified of a stolen armored tank going around and had sent a police helicopter to watch Sean's every move, capturing almost the entire Rampage on camera. First off, they did not know who was operating the tank and were not sure if it was armed with any ammunition, but it would later be discovered that all the ammunition was separated inside a building in the armory, meaning the tanks were not loaded, and so Sean could only run over anything he comes across. But what they did know was that whoever was driving the tank has experience on doing so. He obviously knew what he was doing. He was working that tank pretty good, said Jerry Sanders, a police chief who was once a SWAT commander during the 1984 massacre at a McDonald's in San Ysidro. As the police helicopter watched the tank from up above, loudspeakers would blast, warning people to get off the streets and flee inside homes and take shelter. There were many cars passing by and pedestrians too dangerously close throughout the chase, but thankfully, Sean didn't make any sort of attempt to run over pedestrians or people inside their vehicles, just to continue to cause as much damage to San Diego as possible. With many police cars following and being chased by the tank, the police knew that they themselves do not know how to stop Sean, and so they notified the Marine Corps for help on stopping the tank. But the issue was if it was okay to use military assets against a civilian on US soil, and they also feared that their Cobra attack helicopter's anti-tank missiles might miss and could hit the innocent people around. While they were debating on sending the Cobra attack helicopter, Sean made his way into the freeway with slightly heavy traffic, but all cars slowed down or stopped as the tank made it in and drove past them. It was there when Sean spotted a pedestrian bridge and made a scary attempt on knocking it down by destroying one of the pillars. The tank rammed into one multiple times, causing slight damage, but after several attempts, Sean gave up and continued onwards as the police behind him watched helplessly try to take down a bridge. Luckily, no one was seen to be on the bridge at the time, as at that point, news across San Diego and beyond were spreading like wildfire about this slow but deadly chase. It's already been 20 minutes since Sean made his escape from the armory and caused over $100,000 in property damage. Police were both ahead, behind, and above the tank as they follow and warn people to get off the freeway. At this point, police did not know where Sean was heading for until he made a huge move. The tank suddenly turned left, seemingly to the other side of the freeway. Just all he has to do was to destroy the barriers and come towards the oncoming traffic, where people would definitely be injured or killed. He broke down the barriers, but it partially disabled the tank, leaving it stuck. It was then when police surrounded the disabled tank, still functioning, just moving back and forth. Dozens of officers watched, but it took 4 to take a leap of faith and climb on the tank. One of those officers, Paul Paxton, was able to open the hatch and spotted Sean on the controls, attempting to drive the tank to the other side. Paul shouted down orders to stop the tank. Sean looked up, but did not say a word, and focused back on the controls. Another officer, Rick Piner, decided that if Paxton's orders were ignored by Sean at gunpoint, then him and his fellow officers had no other choice. Rick fired a single shot at Sean, striking him in the neck, ultimately ending the rampage and chase. Viewers who were watching the live footage watched the entire rampage and its ending. This lasted for around 23 minutes. Paramedics arrived and attended to Sean before taking him to the nearest hospital, Sharp Memorial, which was not too far from where the tank stopped. leaving law enforcement to believe that Sean's sudden turn of directions was to target the same hospital that he blamed for the death of his mother and revenge for the counter lawsuit. If those barriers were to be destroyed, then Sean would have crushed down passing cars and caused a lot of damage to the hospital, and many people may have been injured or killed. In the aftermath of the rampage, many people questioned whether it was necessary to shoot Sean, including Sean's friends who criticized the shooting, stating that the police should have used tear gas or crisis negotiation. San Diego Police Department's captain at the time defended the decision, stating, "The bottom line was, we had to stop this guy. He could have taken out no less than 35 vehicles that were passing at the moment." Hey, a little editing update while I'm finishing up this video, which let me just say, in technicality, this video has taken me more than a year to make because initially I was halfway done with this video back in like early 2024, but the more I edit, the more I didn't like it and made a poll for you guys to vote on, or whether I should say fuck it and just finish it, scrap it, or postpone it, which the majority of you have voted on postponing it, and so I did. Here we are now in 2025, finally finishing out this video, so if you somehow enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe and comment on whether or not it was justifiable to shoot Sean, because the reason why I'm recording this is that this debate resulted in a loss of life and a friendship. A couple of days after the rampage in May 21st, two best friends / co-workers in LA went to a bar for the evening, hanging out after work, and brought up the topic of the San Diego tank rampage. They were chatting, drinking, and turning their focus on Sean himself. Assumingly, the two may have opposite opinions. One of them was on the side of, yeah, it was okay, and the other, no, it was not okay, but suddenly the two became physical. As they left the bar, they began to play fight, horsing around, which in the eyes of fellow patrons and staff members, this didn't seem unusual. Until one of them got upset and pulled out a large knife and started stabbing the other about half a dozen times. 25-year-old Jeffrey Calhoun died that night, and 19-year-old Vincent Beltran was arrested the next morning. Not much else I could find about this debate turned deadly incident. I just came across this short story by looking at old newspapers talking about the rampage itself. To this day, the death of Sean is still debated on whether it was justifiable or not. For me, I believe that the choice of using less lethal force to take down Sean was there, but still the fact remains that Sean was operating a whole ass tank, was not cooperating with the officers who hopped on in the tank, and they weren't sure if Sean himself was armed. That's all about this editing update. Let's finish this video, please. Sharp Memorial reported his death over at the hospital due to gunshot wounds, and the San Diego's coroner office have claimed that they detect the smell of alcohol all along finding meth in his system, which a lot of people may have come to the conclusion that Sean was heavily intoxicated, but was able to sneak into an armory, steal a tank, and went out of his way to destroy around 20 parked cars and cause 5,000 homes to lose electricity, and ultimately cause over $100,000 of damage in San Diego, all without injuring or killing someone. After 30 years, Sean's motive remains unclear, leaving people to make up theories that maybe it wasn't the drugs, but rather something deep, maybe some sort of revenge or suicide, similar to Marvin Heemeyer, who again went on a similar rampage around a decade later with an armored bulldozer functioning like a tank, but what later took his own life after accidentally disabling his homemade tank. After the San Diego tank rampage, the mentioned armory were under fire for the lack of security, even though the Oklahoma City bombing had them hiding their security, and that vehicles entering armory grounds should have been checked. Sean easily managed to park his van and enter the grounds with no problems at all, like he owns the place. Since then, the armory had improved security and awareness, along with moving all the tanks to either Fort Irwin or Camp Roberts. The 1995 San Diego tank rampage is still talked about to this day. Those who knew Sean had watched him become a shell of his former self. Sean's older brother Scott stated, "The man who died was only a shell of the person we loved. The real Sean died 2 years ago at the hands of drugs and alcohol."